All right, let's dive in. You hear it all the time, right? Just run the code or compile your TypeScript. But what does that actually mean? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most fundamental ideas in all of programming, the runtime. So picture this. You write that classic, perfect first line of code, console.log, hello world, and it works. But have you ever really stopped to think about it? Who or what is actually running it? Who's listening? Who reads that line, figures out what you want, and slaps hello world onto your screen? It's a bigger question than you might think, because here's the absolute key. Your code is just text. That's it. It's just a bunch of instructions you typed into a file. By itself, it can't do a single thing. It's powerless. It needs a helper, some kind of system to read those instructions and actually bring them to life. And that someone, that helper, is what we call a runtime, or more formally, a runtime environment. You can think of it as the complete life support system for your code. Seriously, if you want to understand how programming really works under the hood, this is the concept you've got to get. Okay, so let's get a little more specific. What is a runtime environment? Well, it's the whole shebang. It's the entire system that gives your code everything it needs to function. It's not just executing the code, it's creating the entire world for that code to live and breathe in.
And to make this super simple, you can break down pretty much any runtime into 3 core parts. Think of it like this. First, you've got the engine. This is the brain, right? It's the part that actually reads and understands your code. Then you've got the environment. This is the place, the world where your code is running. And finally, you have the APIs. These are the tools. They're what your code uses to interact with that world. So you've got the engine, the environment, and the APIs. Got it. Brain, place, tools. We're going to come back to this.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. Because once you understand that 3-part structure, you start to see it everywhere. And for us JavaScript developers, there are 2 main worlds, 2 big runtimes that we live in every single day: the browser and Node.js. So let's start with the OG, the original runtime. Way back in the day, web pages were, just static documents. Kind of boring. Then along comes JavaScript, promising to make everything interactive and cool. But there was a problem. For JavaScript to actually do anything, the folks making the browsers had to build a special place for it to live. And just like that, the browser runtime was born. So let's apply our little formula here. Inside a browser like Chrome, what do we have? Well, the engine, the brain, is Google's famous V8 engine. The environment, the place, is the web page itself, the DOM. And the APIs, those are the tools, things you use all the time, like window, document, fetch for making network calls, or listening for a mouse click. All of those are tools the browser gives your code.
And this is the perfect example of how it all works together. When you write something like document.querySelector_a, what's happening? The V8 engine is the brain that's executing your instruction. But the document part? That's not part of JavaScript itself. That's a tool, an API, that the browser environment hands to your code, giving it the superpower to actually reach into the web page and grab that link.
Now, the browser runtime is amazing, it's super powerful, but it's also locked down. It's a secure little sandbox, which leads to a big question. What if we wanted to use this awesome language, JavaScript, for stuff outside the browser? Like reading a file right off our computer? See, the browser has some really strict rules, and for very good reason. You don't want any random website to be able to read your personal files, right? So browser code can't touch your local file system. It can't really talk to your operating system. You can't just pop open a terminal and run it. This sandbox is great for keeping you safe, but it really put a ceiling on what JavaScript could do. And this is where Node.js completely changes the game. The creators did something that was just genius. They took the exact same V8 engine, the powerful brain from Google Chrome, and they ripped it out of the browser. They put it in a totally new environment, your own computer, your server, and then they gave it a completely different toolbox, a new set of APIs, things like FS to work with the file system, Process to talk to the operating system, and HTTP to build web servers from scratch. It's the same brain, but in a totally different world, with a completely new set of tools.
And you can see the difference so clearly when you look at their unique superpowers. In the browser, you can do window.alert hello. That makes total sense on a web page. But in Node.js, you can do fs.readFileSystem myfile.txt to actually read a file off your hard drive. Now try to run window.alert in Node. It'll crash. Try to read a file with fs in the browser. Nope, not going to happen. They live in different worlds and have totally different powers.
Okay, so we've got the browser runtime and the Node.js runtime. But where the heck does TypeScript fit in all of this? This is a super common point of confusion, People ask, is TypeScript its own runtime? And the answer is a big, clear no. It's something else entirely. Here's the number one thing you have to remember about TypeScript. No runtime on Earth can run it directly. Not V8, not anything. It can't understand it. Think of TypeScript as a special dialect that helps us developers write better, safer code. But before our runtime can even look at it, it has to be translated, or compiled, back into plain old JavaScript that the engine can understand.
But wait a second. That compiler, the program that does the translating, what runs that? Well, the TypeScript compiler, TSC, it's a program itself. And here's the kicker. It's written in JavaScript. So if you have a JavaScript program that needs to do powerful things like reading files from your computer, your .ts files, and writing new files, the compiled .js files, what does it need? You guessed it. It needs a runtime. It needs the Node.js runtime.
Okay, let's tie this all together with a perfect real-world example, building a Chrome extension. This whole process shows you exactly how these two runtimes work together hand in hand.
So here's the workflow. Step 1. You, the developer, write your cool extension logic in a content.ts file. Great. Step 2. On your machine, you run the compiler. What's happening here? The Node.js runtime is running that compiler program, which takes your TypeScript and spits out a plain content.js file. Then step 3, you take that final JavaScript file and load it into Google Chrome. And at that point, the browser runtime takes over and actually runs the code on the web page. It's so cool. You use the Node runtime for your development tools and the browser runtime for the final execution.
And just for a geeky little aside, ever wonder what's at the very bottom of all this? Like, what are these runtimes actually written in? Well, while we're happily writing our JavaScript, the foundations, the V8 engine itself, those browser APIs, the core of Node.js, they're all built using super fast, powerful languages like C++. That C++ code creates the rock-solid, high-performance world that our JavaScript gets to play in.
All right, so let's boil this all down. What are the key things you need to walk away with? First, code is just text. A runtime is what brings it to life. Second, remember that magic formula. Runtime equals engine plus environment plus APIs. The brain, the place, the tools. Third, the browser runtime gives JavaScript its web superpowers, like manipulating a web page. Fourth, the Node.js runtime gives JavaScript system superpowers, like reading files. And finally, remember that our favorite tools, like the TypeScript compiler, are actually Node programs that use the Node runtime to get their job done. So in the end, maybe the best way to think about it is this. Your code, that's just an idea. It's a blueprint. But the runtime, that's the world. That's the factory. It's the entire universe where your idea gets to stop being just an idea and finally becomes real.